For years, Ghana stood tall on Africa's mineral map. A proud gold-producing nation alongside South Africa and Sudan, Ghana boasted vast reserves of one of the world's most valuable resources. Yet this golden blessing masked a bitter truth. While tons of gold were mined and shipped out annually, the Ghanaian people saw barely a fraction of its true value. Gold worth billions of dollars flowed to foreign refineries and international vaults, while Ghana battled debt, joblessness, and a fragile currency. It was a paradox too painful to ignore. How could a country so rich in natural resources remain so poor in economic returns? The answer lay in a hard reality. The gold was Ghanaian, but the control, the profits, and the power belonged to outsiders. For decades, multinational corporations from Europe, North America, and Australia moved in with grand promises of development, employment, and infrastructure. But behind these carefully crafted public relations campaigns was a machinery designed for one thing: extraction. These foreign entities mined Ghana's gold cheaply, transported it raw to offshore locations, refined it far away from African soil, and sold it at margins that dwarfed what Ghana ever received. The Ghanaian role in this entire chain of events was simple and limited: dig the gold, hand it over, accept the crumbs, and stay out of the boardrooms where the real decisions were made. The cycle repeated itself with ruthless efficiency. Generations of Ghanaians watched as their country's most prized asset was siphoned away, wrapped in legal contracts and protected by the illusion of foreign investment. The truth was clear. It wasn't guns that stole Africa's wealth. It was paperwork. It was policy. It was economic systems designed to keep Africans at the bottom of the value chain. But in early 2025, something changed. And it changed not with speeches, protests, or international summits, but with cold, undeniable numbers. In just the first 4 months of that year, Ghana earned a staggering $2.7 billion from gold exports. This wasn't an accidental uptick. This was a deliberate shift in direction. The volume of gold exported skyrocketed, jumping from just over 7,000 kilograms in early 2023 to more than 30,000 kilograms by April 2025. The gold was always there. It simply hadn't been accounted for, hadn't been protected, hadn't been owned by the nation that mined it. What changed wasn't the amount of gold in the ground. It was the system that controlled it. Ghana finally decided to become the gatekeeper. It was no longer content with being a supplier. It wanted to be the authority. It wanted to be the owner. And this transformation did not begin in Accra. It was sparked by events in Ouagadougou, the capital of neighboring Burkina Faso. In 2022, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a military officer who rose to power amid political and social upheaval, made a bold decision that stunned observers. He banned the export of raw gold, constructed a national refinery, and declared with striking clarity that Burkina Faso's gold would serve its own people. In his words, Africa's wealth is stolen not with guns, but with contracts. It was a direct challenge to the status quo, a move that many considered dangerous, radical, even reckless. But while foreign investors panicked and Western analysts warned of doom, something very different was happening across the border in Ghana. Traoré's actions did not inspire fear. They inspired curiosity, then admiration. In Ghana's parliament, whispers turned into conversations. Economic think tanks began analyzing the feasibility of a similar approach. Could Ghana, with its more developed infrastructure and democratic institutions, pull off a version of this strategy on a larger scale? Could it redefine its relationship with its own resources? The answer came swiftly with the return of John Mahama to the presidency. His earlier time in office had been marked by challenges, criticisms, and an inability to significantly alter Ghana's economic dependence on external forces. But this time, Mahama returned with a mission, not to manage the system, but to change it. He didn't look to the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank for direction. He looked to Traoré. What he saw wasn't chaos. It was a roadmap. He recognized that resource control was not just about economics, it was about sovereignty, and Ghana was ready. Mahama's administration wasted no time. One of the earliest and most transformative decisions was the creation of the Ghana Gold Board, or GGB. This was not a ceremonial institution. It was a powerful regulatory body modeled directly after the state apparatus in Burkina Faso. Its mission was simple, yet revolutionary: ensure that every ounce of Ghanaian gold served the interests of Ghana before it ever served anyone else. This meant dismantling the shadowy networks of unregulated traders, ending under-the-table deals, and pulling back the curtain on a system that had operated in secrecy for far too long. One of the first major policies rolled out was the 20% Doré bar mandate. Every mining operation, whether locally owned or foreign, was now legally obligated to submit 20% of its refined gold output to the GGB before they could export a single gram. These weren't raw samples easily manipulated or diluted. They were semi-pure Doré bars, tangible, traceable, and extremely difficult to falsify. This meant that Ghana would physically hold part of its own wealth before allowing any of it to leave. The move provided the state with a real, visible, and verifiable share of its natural treasure. Next came the crackdown on foreign traders. For years, entities from countries like the United Arab Emirates and Switzerland had taken advantage of loose regulations to buy Ghanaian gold cheaply and smuggle it out through back channels. These traders often offered fast money but left no long-term value. Under Mahama's leadership, these loopholes were slammed shut. Only state-approved and closely monitored actors were allowed to trade, refine, or export gold. The message was clear. The age of unchecked access to Ghana's resources was over. Perhaps the most significant reform was full state oversight of all gold exports. No more private deals behind closed doors. No more shipments disappearing without traceable records. From now on, the Ghana Gold Board would supervise every gram that left the country, and the results were both immediate and staggering. In just 3 months, Ghana's gold reserves at the central bank soared. What had been under 9 metric tons now climbed past 30 metric tons. This was not theoretical wealth. It was solid gold. It provided the central bank with the ability to back the local currency, reduce dependence on foreign currencies, and resist the pressure of international lenders who had long used debt as a tool of control. Far from scaring off investment, these reforms empowered local industry. Ghanaian entrepreneurs, once boxed out by powerful multinational mining firms, began entering the field. They opened refining plants, built logistics companies, and expanded gold-related services. Jobs were created not only in mining, but in entire sectors that had previously been dominated by outsiders. Value was no longer shipped abroad. It was being created and retained within Ghana's borders. And as Ghana rose, the continent watched. In Mali, where political tensions had strained relations with Western powers, leaders looked to the Ghana model for answers. In Niger, facing economic sanctions and seeking independence from foreign influence, Ghana's approach was studied carefully. Tanzania reopened old debates about refining and national ownership. In Zimbabwe, the message was heard loud and clear. This was not about nationalism or isolationism. This was about standing up. This new wave of African thinking wasn't about imitating Ghana's policies word for word. It was about adopting the mindset, the realization that sovereignty doesn't mean self-destruction. It means protection. It means leadership. It means finally taking what is rightfully ours and using it to build futures for our children, not profits for shareholders in faraway cities. Western commentators and corporate executives were quick to label these movements as dangerous, regressive, or anti-business. but their criticisms exposed more about their own fears than about the actions of African states. What scared them was not chaos in Africa. What scared them was control in Africa. Because control meant negotiation. Control meant leverage. Control meant an end to the era where Africa's role was to give and everyone else's role was to take. The true victory of Ghana's gold revolution is not just in the billions it has earned, it is in the minds of the people. A mental liberation is taking root across the continent. Young people now talk about gold not just as a shiny mineral or a source of national pride. They see it as power, as leverage, as something that belongs to them, not to a government, not to a foreign investor, but to the people of Africa. They see examples of leadership that don't bow to pressure, that don't fear standing alone, that don't compromise sovereignty for comfort. Captain Ibrahim Traoré lit the spark with his audacious challenge to the global gold system. President Mahama took that spark and turned it into a raging fire of reform. Together, without formal alliances or conferences, they launched a new era. An era where African wealth is for Africans first, where contracts serve communities, not corporations, where leadership means defending what's ours, not negotiating it away. To every viewer, supporter, and subscriber of Voice of Africa, thank you. You are part of this awakening. You help us shine a light on truths that others want hidden. Ghana's gold revolution is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a continent that rises not by permission, but by purpose. Let us continue to tell these stories, demand our worth, and celebrate every step forward. The world may not be ready, but Africa is. And we're just